All of us have people that are constantly coming into or leaving our lives. Some of them we forget about in a month or two, while others make a lasting impression on our lives. One such person for me is Mrs. Kelch. Most of you know her as a teacher or a counselor, but to me she is also a friend. She taught me the value of hard work and pushed me as a student and as an individual. This shaped me into the type of student that I am today. I first got to know her as a student in her 5th grade class at Jefferson Elementary School. She pushed me really hard academically throughout the year. The best example I have of this is our accelerated math program. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a program through the computer instead of using textbooks. The program allows students to work at their own pace by providing practices, exercises, and tests. You use different objectives and you go through the objectives through practices and tests, and if you don't pass with a certain percent, you do exercises. So the faster you go over the practices and the tests, the farther you move on, like the faster you move on. I was always really good at math, and so I moved ahead of my class early on in the year. She always taught a math lesson at the beginning of class for the objectives that most students in the class were going over, or the ones that they were getting ready to go over. But instead of making me sit through and listen to a lesson of what I had done weeks before, she took time before the lesson to give me my own math lesson one-on-one so I could work when she was teaching the rest of the class. She actually encouraged me and pushed me to keep moving ahead of my class instead of wanting me to slow down so she could just teach everybody at the same time. She also took an interest in each student as an individual. There were some Mondays I remember in class that we would talk for an hour just about what we did over the weekend. She would make sure that everybody got a share and no one was left out. Through this, she got to know her students personally, but not only was she getting to know her students, we were also getting to know each other better. We started to realize that there were kids in our class that we might never have talked to, but yet we had similar interests. This taught us how to care about one another and brought us closer together as a class. In addition to this, she would always try to make it to sporting events that her students were involved in on the weekends. I even remember her making it to a couple of our basketball tournaments close to great men. As 11 and 12-year-olds, we felt really special and were excited to see somebody besides our family that had traveled out of town just to watch us play. Her interest in her students carried over to her counseling job at Great Bend High School as well. Instead of being like the other counselors who called their students down to their office maybe twice a year to go over their academic plan, she would send notes to me to go see her about every 2 weeks. While there, we would just talk about how my life was going or how I was doing in school. She always pushed me to stay at the top of my class, but yet encouraged me to have fun. When it came down to having to choose what classes I would take junior year, I had the tough decision of either taking choir and going to Washington, D.C. with all my friends, or taking another weighted class just to stay at the top of my class. I remember her asking me, when I grow up, would I remember the memories I made in D.C. with my friends, or would I remember giving a 5-minute speech at graduation? That helped me make the decision to take choir and go to D.C., and she supported my decision completely. Throughout my high school career, she was always willing to give me good letters of recommendation. In this letter of recommendation, since she knew me personally, she was able to provide examples of how I was as a person and not just as a student. She talked about some of the obstacles I'd overcome with my health and how I was still active in my church and in my community. As time approached to start applying for scholarships my senior year, she helped me fill them out, and she gave me advice. She was always willing to help other kids too. Instead of just finding scholarships that almost all of her students were eligible for, she would take the time to look for certain ones to fit students' needs. For example, she called me down to her office one day and had found one just for me for kids that had arthritis. I talked to other kids who said she did this type of thing for them as well. This shows that she took the time and cared about her students individually. She didn't just group all of them together and find scholarships that would take her the least amount of time and effort. Even though I went off to college last year, she kept in touch with me and wrote me letters of recommendations for organizations at K-State. I view her more as a friend than as a teacher or counselor. Mrs. Kelch isn't just one of those people that come into your life and then fades from it without making some sort of an impact. She is a teacher and a counselor, but most importantly, she is a friend to her students. Without her pushing me constantly towards success, I would not be the type of student that I am today. So for that, I thank her.